Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're looking at this. It's the Harley Benton MR-Modern Baritone guitar. Now, despite being named modern, this guitar is part of Harley Benton's vintage series of guitars, and because it's a baritone, that basically means that it's got a longer scale length and a longer neck than your standard electric guitar. It's got thicker strings, and you can tune it down lower. Now, this also being a Harley Benton instrument, it's very much an affordable baritone. This currently will set you back around €349, and so this video is going to be a double-pronged attack of sorts. It's going to be my standard review demo, so we're going to go through the specs and features, the playability and the sounds of the guitar, but I'm also going to take some time and discuss whether or not I think the MR-Modern Baritone should be your first baritone if you're taking a step into that world of guitars. So get ready for that then. First, what we'll do is go through the specifications and the features of the guitar, then we'll play it in as many different styles and musical genres and settings as I can manage to do anyway, and at the end I'll speak in a bit more detail about what I think about having had this instrument here at home for the past few months, what I think about its build quality and its playability, whether I think it's worth your money at the end of the day, and whether or not in fact this guitar serves as the perfect beginner's baritone, if you will. So stick around for that and go down and check out your favorite parts in the timestamps if that's what you want to do. So let's go first into those specifications and features then. So for €349 you get an awful lot for your money. That's the typical Harley Benton thing. I should also say that there is a classic version of this guitar available, and that's actually €100 cheaper still. That's €250. However, I do think upon reflection that you get some extra specs and features and woods in the modern version that give you just a little bit more value for money, and I'll speak about those a little bit later in the video. So what have we got here then? Well, we've got a beautiful three-tone sunburst on the guitar's older body. You can see that it's black on the back there. It's a very big, hefty, chunky body in the Mosrite style, so pretty cool and kooky, 60s classic looking sort of a body. We've got two pickups here, which are actually P90 sized Artec humbuckers, and they have a coil tap as well. So you've got full humbucking mode and single coil modes in these pickups. You have a master volume control here and a master tone control here, and you pull up the tone control to access the coil tap on the pickups. Now, when it comes to the bridge here, we've got no expenses spared in terms of big name brands here. We've got a Wilkinson VS-50 II premium tremolo system here, so that should serve well for all of our whammy bar goodness. I really like the off-white scratch plate here as well. It plays off against the three-color sunburst very nicely indeed. It's very classic and elegant looking. Here's the three-way switch to move between the different pickup options. If we move up to the neck of the guitar, we can see that it is slightly longer than that of a standard electric guitar. So it has a 27-inch scale length. Now, the classic standard tuned guitar version of this instrument has a 25.5-inch scale length. So that's an 1.5 inch difference, which might not seem like much, but it's actually how you use it, as a lot of you will know. And getting your fingers around that extra 1.5 inch can sometimes be a little bit of a different experience, but we'll get onto that in the playing part of the video. Now, we also have a Macassar ebony fingerboard here. So again, great value for money for a €349 guitar. We have 22 blacksmith stainless steel frets, so that's another great feature to have at this price point. Stainless steel frets will never wear down. Now, they don't tell us what size the frets are, but to me they feel like they're medium jumbo or possibly even jumbo. They're pretty big, very comfy indeed. We have a 12-inch fingerboard radius here, so fairly flat. We have a 42mm nut here, and we have a C-shaped neck, which is in a satin maple finish. Very comfy indeed, kind of a very sort of universal sized neck profile. Won't be too big for anybody, shouldn't be too slim for anybody either. Moving up to the headstock, and you can see that Harley Benton have spared no expenses there. We have a three-tone sunburst finish on the headstock too. And flicking over to the back there, we've got Harley Benton locking tuners. So very many specifications and features for €349. But how does the MR-Modern Baritone sound? That's what we're going to find out next, because next my job is to play this guitar in as many different musical styles as possible. Now, if you've watched videos about baritone guitars, or if you've played one yourself, you'll know that it's a different kettle of fish to your standard guitar. Now, if you just sit and strum cowboy chords, you're not going to get the same sort of response and sound and tonal brilliance as you'd get from a standard tuned normal electric guitar. So I'm going to have to play a bit differently, but because I'm also learning my way in the ways of the baritone, I'm going to play a few riffs and licks in my standard indie and classic rock styles, just to sort of show you how you possibly shouldn't do it if you get a baritone, because I think it's also important to note what sounds good on a baritone and perhaps what doesn't sound quite so good. So we're going to go through a bunch of different styles with the guitar then and see how they all sound. And I'll also use the humbuckers and the coil tap mode so you really get a full overview of what this guitar can do. So my rig for today is going to be my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 head. We'll start on the amps clean channel and play a few cowboy chords, a few arpeggios. We'll strum a few bits and pieces and see how we can get the baritone to sound there. Then we'll do what I've seen so many other baritone players do and kick in a bit of healthy reverb and tremolo, get some nice ambient tones going on with that, see what we can do there. After that, I'll kick in my Greer Lightspeed organic overdrive pedal, and we'll do what I normally do with standard guitars, and that's play some indie rock and some classic rock too, and we'll see if that really works on a baritone type guitar. After that, we'll kick in some heavier sounds. We'll use my Rev G3 pedal and the lead channel also on the Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 to get some hard rock sounds, some alt rock sounds, some punk rock sounds, just see what we can do there. And at the very end, we'll tune this guitar down to what would be drop D, but is actually drop A with this guitar. We'll do some down-tuned metal and see if we can make the MR-Modern Baritone chug. Enough talk then, it's the Harley Benton MR-Modern Baritone guitar. Let's play it now and we'll speak in more detail about it afterwards. Okay then, so that was the Harley Benton MR-Modern Baritone guitar, and I hope you enjoyed the playing and the tones. And I hope that if you're someone who's kind of interested in getting a baritone but haven't had one yet, this video, and especially the musical part, has very much opened your eyes to what styles and sorts of music you can get away with playing on a baritone, and what kinds you should probably leave to a standard guitar with a standard scale length and standard tuning. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is tell you in a bit more detail my thoughts on this specific instrument, what I think about the build quality, the playability and the sounds, and also whether or not I think this could be a decent choice as your first baritone if you're stepping into that world of the guitar. First then, my first impressions when I got the guitar out of the box. I was very much taken aback by the colour. I think it looks wonderful. I love the fact that you've got a 3-tone sunburst on the headstock as well. This is a really cool looking instrument. Now, I'm a big fan of Mosrite style guitars, and I have previously done a video on the standard 6-string classic version of this guitar by Harley Benton, which you can also see on my channel by clicking on the little link up there after this. But I really love this shape of guitar. I love the kind of offset body. It's big and chunky, and you have this ridge here over the top of it, but it's just kind of cool. It looks fantastic, and it's big, and it does take some getting used to. Couple that with the 27-inch scale length here, and this is a new thing, and you can see straight away that a baritone is not the same as a standard guitar. Possibly sounds a bit stupid, but if you've never really played one or had one to yourself before for an extended period of time, that might be something that you don't actually know. Now, the other thing that I noticed straight away was the weight of this guitar. I'd expected it to weigh more than a standard instrument possibly would because it's bigger and it's got more wood after all, and it does weigh 3.9 kilograms, which is 8 pounds 9. So it's fairly weighty, but I know some Les Pauls that are heavier than that, so not too bad in that regard. And also the classic guitar version of this that I had was just a smidgen lighter at 3.8 kilograms, so not too heavy at the end of the day, and it feels decent to play sitting down or standing up with a guitar strap on. The next thing that I looked at was the build quality and how well this guitar feels like it's been made. And for €350, I really can't find anything at fault here. The finish has been applied really well. I love that three-tone sunburst there on the body and also on the headstock too. In terms of the build quality of the guitar itself, the hardware that's been used, the Wilkinson bridge seems really decent. I find no faults with the Arctic pickups. The pots and knobs are not scratchy or crackly. They all do their job. The locking tuners up here, the Harley Benton locking tuners, do their job really well as well. In terms of the setup of the guitar as well, it's about as easy to play as I would have expected it could be as a baritone guitar. Now, it's got thicker strings than a standard electric would have. These are 13 to 62 gauge strings, where you'd expect to get 9 or 10 gauge strings on a standard electric, but it plays as slinkily as I could have ever expected it to. The blacksmith stainless steel frets have been done really well. The action is nice and low, the intonation is decent as well, absolutely nothing to complain about there. And that also aids in the playability of this guitar. Now, as I previously mentioned, this is a big weighty beast of a guitar, and of course it's a baritone too, so you do have to play it and approach it differently to a standard instrument. I learned straight away that playing big open cowboy chords, which I like to do a lot, is perhaps not something I should do as much on this instrument as I would with a standard guitar, for example. But that's something that if this is your first baritone, you'll feel your way into straight away. Now, in terms of the rest of the playability, the neck profile on this meant that it was very easy for me to get my fingers round. I didn't struggle with the extra scale length problems at all. That was not an issue for me. Now, if you want upper fret access, you'll get it very easily on this guitar thanks to the offset double cutaway. That's a very cool thing to have if you want to be up and soloing at the top end of a fretboard on a baritone. And in terms of the rest of the playability, I think the only other thing that I want to mention is the fact that when I have the guitar jack lead plugged in here, when I have the whammy bar here, and I've got the tone control here, it's a bit fiddly to get my hands to everything at the same time if I want to do something like that. Not a problem most of the time, but if you want to make quick changes, that is something that you have to get used to. And then we come to that super important part of how good does this guitar actually sound. And I have to say that I'm really surprised at how good I managed to make it sound as a baritone beginner. Now, I know that the riffs that I've used, the stuff that I've played, is not going to be as good as people who are baritone natives, but as someone who's starting out with it, I was surprised that I was able to get it sounding somewhat decent straight away. And it opens up a whole new different world of musical creativity for me too, because you have to approach it so differently. You need to take a different approach to playing chords, to playing single notes, to working out what harmonics work well, and how to play different riffs in different parts of the fretboard than you normally would. So it's a very cool experience indeed. In terms of the sounds themselves then, now we've got a very versatile guitar here. Starting with the clean tones, I thought that we had a natural aggression to this baritone guitar that you don't get from a standard scale length instrument. You can just feel like it wants to get a bit down and dirty, which of course it does because it's a baritone. But in terms of the clean tones then, strumming your cowboy chords, your G's and C's, or at least those fingerings, is not going to be ideal because you just have messy frequencies. It doesn't work quite so well. So what you'll need to do there if you want to play chords is have a bit of a tweak with your EQs on your amp to make sure that the low frequencies don't overload the rest of the chord. That is something that you can do. I thought that the best clean tones that I got were when I added a bit more reverb. I used my Fender Treverb pedal there to get tremolo and reverb tones that really gave me some nice atmospheric sounds, and I could just noodle away for days on those settings, to be honest with you. Really liked that. When we kicked in the crunch, now I used my Greer Lightspeed Overdrive for the light to medium crunch, and that's the pedal that I always use with my standard electric guitars to play indie rock and to play classic rock as well. And those are perhaps genres that I realized you're going to have to find a much more different approach to when playing a baritone. Of course, you can get indie and you can get classic rock tones using a guitar like this, but I did just play a few of the standard riffs that I normally play to show you that while they do work with a baritone, they sound just a little bit odd. And of course, they probably would. And I've definitely learned something by going through this process, and hopefully you've learned a little bit by listening to it as well. But I realized that if I was going to play classic rock on this guitar, I'd want to approach it differently. I wouldn't be able to do my standard A A fingering chords because it's just a bit muddy. Sounded kind of cool and was a little bit different, a bit of a novelty, but you'd always use a standard guitar to play that kind of stuff. That said though, especially when it came to the indie sounds, I realized that there are many new worlds of tones available in this guitar, and it did sound very decent on full humbucking mode and on coil split mode as well. After that, we got up into higher gain territory, and that's where I felt like this guitar was more in its home environment. Now, when you've got the humbucker mode equipped, it really gets evil and thick and punchy straight away. For the hard rock stuff, again, some of those standard riffs that I play, they're not at home on a baritone, but playing more single notes, playing some more leady sort of stuff, playing some heavy riffs and down tuning as well, and it just sounds massive and thick and full, and it's just a wonderful thing to play if it's something you've never played before. When we tuned it down to drop A, I did find that it got a little bit muddier than when it was tuned to the standard B, but that's again something that I need to learn. I need to work out how to dial my amp and my Rev G3 pedal in to get the best sounds there. But nevertheless, you can totally see that the potential is there to get amazing thick metal tones out of this guitar. And if you realize that it can do that metal that well, and it can do super nice cleans that well as well, you have a guitar that can really cover every single genre known to man. Now, there are just two notes of caution that I'd like to mention here when it comes to the sounds of the guitar. The first is what I've already mentioned, and that is that you probably will need to dial your amp and pedals in to make the most of the tones of a baritone guitar. You do need to set things up differently to a standard electric guitar amp, standard pedal settings, to make sure that you don't overload yourself with muddy bass frequencies. Now, the other thing, which is a bit of a caution that I just wanted to mention, is not too much of a problem and actually helps you a bit with the first problem, because when you activate the coil tap, you get those sweet single coil tones, and they sound great. They really thin out the sound, and they do make it better for playing chords and stuff like that. However, you do get a significant volume drop when you activate the coil tap. So if that's something you're going to be moving quickly between during a live gig, for example, you'll need to find a solution there, possibly a boost pedal or something like that, to make sure that you don't get lost in the mix. But in terms of sounds overall, I'm pleasantly surprised by this guitar. I really like the Arctic pickups, and I really like the tones I was getting. And so if you've been watching the video to this point and you love the idea of a baritone, but you're not too sure about whether you want to spring the money for the MR-Modern Baritone, what else is out there? Well, there are a bunch of other options, and the first thing that I would suggest you look at in that sense is Harley Benton itself. There are a couple of even cheaper baritones by Harley Benton. There is the classic version of the Modern, for example. Now, I said at the start of this video that I feel the Modern is worth the extra money, and I do retain that opinion here, and that's because you get extra specs and features, and also I think the tuning stability of the locking tuners that you don't get with the classic model. You also get the Mikasa ebony fingerboard, you get these humbuckers with coil tap options, you get the glow-in-the-dark inlays if that's what you want as well, you get the stainless steel frets. You're paying €100 more for quite a lot in terms of extra features, in my opinion. However, you get those super cool P90s for €250 in the baritone version of this in the classic, so that could be worth a look as well. There is also a super new and super cheap Harley Benton baritone, the JA Baritone, which is a Jazzmaster Fender offset kind of shape. That's very affordable. That's under €200. I haven't had the chance to play one at time of filming, but I'd really like to get my play on with that at some point as well. If you've played one, let me know down in the comments. When it comes to other affordable baritone type guitars, there's not that much around. The next ones in terms of budget, I would say, would be the Squier Classic Vibes. You've got the Cabronita Telecasters and some other offset options. Some of them you might have to find used in second-hand stores, for example, and they start at about €400. And there are some very cool guitars there. The Cabronita Tellies with their P90 pickups are great for surf music and other stuff like that. Really nice guitars, so definitely worth checking out as well. And then if you move up in budget as well, there are different models from the likes of Dan Electro, also from Chapman Guitars and other manufacturers in a similar sort of price point. But if you're looking for something at around €350, you're going to find it very hard to beat the MR-Modern Baritone. And there is one other baritone model that I'd like to mention that looks very similar to this one and is actually the guitar that got me interested in baritones in the first place, and that's the Eastwood Sidejack Baritone. Those are about probably twice the price of this, about €650 or dollars. They look very similar, but they look fantastic as well. You get a rosewood board with those, different pickup options, and there's a deluxe version as well. So check those out. They're available online for people living in Europe, and they're always worth having a look at. And finally, there is one other baritone with which I have very limited experience, and that was a Gretsch Electromatic G5260, which I tried in a store. That's a very cool guitar, costs around €550. It worked really well for me when I just tested it out, and that was what really gave me the itch with baritone guitars to get started with this type of instrument. But again, I keep coming back to the €350 price point here. I think that's a very, very sweet starting price. And if you're asking that question, should this be my first baritone guitar? Well, I'd say if this is what your budget is, you can't go wrong with this instrument. In terms of the specifications that it has, in terms of the features, in terms of the flexibility, and in terms of the ease of playing as well, I just think it's really, really good. And I've looked at the specifications of the others on the market, and I would have to say personally that if I were to be buying a baritone guitar for me to start my journey and my budget was around 300, 400, 500, I'd be totally happy going for this guitar. The second one that I'd probably go for would be one of the Squier Classic Vibes, but I'd want to check those out in person before splashing the cash. And so my final conclusions on the Harley Benton MR-Modern Baritone are that I really, really love this guitar. When Harley Benton sent this to me, I didn't realize it was going to be as much of a difference for me in terms of playing. Now, it is totally different than playing a standard electric guitar, and it's a challenge as well. You really have to get used to it. But at the same time, it's a massive new world of opportunities for me. It's a massive new world of musical creativity and expression for me too. It makes me play differently. It makes me come up with different ideas. And it's also made me listen to different styles of music that I hadn't really looked at before. So in that sense, I really can't recommend this guitar or any other kind of baritone highly enough. Now, in terms of specifications and features, I do think you'll be hard pushed to find a better one than this in terms of the value for money stakes. But check out the others I've mentioned and head down to your local music store and see what else they've got, because there are a bunch of different baritones available, and I think generally you do have to pay big bucks to get really, really amazing ones. But in terms of a beginner's one, this is the one that I would be going for. I love the sunset burst color as well, really, really classy looking, and it looks great on the wall and on the stand as well. I hope that this video has answered any and all of the questions that you might have had about the MR-Modern Baritone, but if there's anything else that you want to know, drop me a question down there in the comments and I shall answer it to the very best of my ability. And look out for future baritone related videos that I've got coming on the channel in future. And hey, if you're still here, it would make my day if you'd like the video or even consider subscribing to the Rich Words Music channel, because that really helps me and the channel out. That's been it for today's video then. I've been Rich for Rich Words Music, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.